Everybody's all set? I'm going to wait a couple more minutes to see how hot we can get it in here. It's only 95 now. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. In a moment, you're going to hear from Mayor de Blasio, and then you'll hear from Chief of Department Terry Monahan. He's going to talk about the June crime stats, and he'll include a summary of the first half of the year. Before that, though, I'd like to say this is really a very exciting day, especially being that we're sitting in this muster room and it's about 90 degrees. Today, we're one step closer to fulfilling a pledge we made to the people of the South Bronx 4 years ago. That was to build a state-of-the-art NYPD facility that belongs to this community like no other station house in the city. This is important because we're committed to fighting crime and keeping people safe in every neighborhood in New York City. And our mission, as you know it, is to be relentless in going after the relatively small percentage of criminals responsible for the majority of the violence in our city. We'll keep doing that until we've helped New Yorkers reclaim every single block where they live, work, and play. People deserve nothing less than their police department's very best efforts in that regard. To that end, the current 4-0 Precinct Station House, where we are right now, you might find this hard to believe, was built in 1923, even before Terry came on the job.
No.
Thank you for laughing. Studies concluded it cannot be rehabilitated for the busy day-to-day activity we need it for, although we are going to repurpose it in some way and keep it in the NYPD family. Meanwhile, we're going to build a brand-new station house here for all the hard-working men and women that work in the 4-0. And importantly, this new station house would be the first of its kind in the history of the NYPD to incorporate a dedicated, directly accessible 800-square-foot community space in which residents and workers can engage with their police officers. The new facility would be at the corner of East 149th Street and St. Anne's Avenue, just about a mile from here. Every aspect of the new building, which won a Public Design Commission award, by the way, has been considered with the people of this neighborhood in mind. We expect this $68 million project to be complete and move-in ready by spring of 2021, less than 3 years from now. All the people who live, work, and visit here will be able to come in and be part of their police department like nowhere else in the 5 boroughs. This is critical because neighborhood policing and the shared responsibility of public safety in our city require us to come together. It's a two-way street and it needs to happen everywhere, out on the blocks, at local businesses, in our parks and public spaces, and soon inside the new 4-0 Precinct Station House. Our message to New Yorkers, going forward, these are your station houses. It's a transformation we're working hard at, especially considering that we're working in a century-old building that was designed for century-old policing methods. So at the outset of neighborhood policing, when we said the methods had to change, that meant everything else had to change along with them, including where we do our jobs. That was our promise to all 8.6 million New Yorkers. We also made a promise to our cops that we would provide modern, state-of-the-art facilities for them to work in. Because everyone should take pride not only in their jobs that they do, but also where they do them. The new station house is a huge step in that direction. And I know Inspector Brian Hennessy, the commanding officer here in the 4-0, whose birthday was yesterday, and all the uniformed and civilian members of this precinct are excited to be part of it. Thank you to Mayor de Blasio for this and for all the ways you support the men and women of the NYPD. I also want to thank Anna Barrio, Acting Commissioner of the Department of Design and Construction, and all of her people who led this effort from the start. And I also want to thank Bayarka Ingalls Group for its incredible design. And thanks to all the NYPD members and all the people they serve up here in the 4-0 for their enthusiasm surrounding this project. We're on this path together, and we're thrilled that this neighborhood will finally get the station house it needs and access to the police department that it deserves. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, I want to thank you and your whole leadership team for all the great work that's been done throughout this year. We now have half a year behind us in 2018. We're going to be looking at the facts of how we've done at the halfway point, how we did in the month of June, how we did compared to last year. I think we see some real progress and, of course, some real challenges. But I want to commend you and your team for all that's been achieved. A special thank you to all the men and women who serve in the 4-0 precinct. And yes, they are serving right now in an almost century-old building, but they're doing an outstanding job, and we look forward to the day where their new facility is ready and really supporting their work further. To Inspector Brian Hennessy, happy birthday, and commend you for all your good work. Where is the inspector? We're celebrating him, and we can't see him, but he's out there somewhere.
He's in the air-conditioned room.
He's in the air-conditioned room. So I also want to say to, there you go. There you go. Well done. Happy birthday. Thank you so much. Want to say to our acting commissioner, DDC, Ana Barrio, and her whole team, congratulations, amazing design. Thank you for all you are doing on behalf of the people of this city and for the men and women of the NYPD with this new station house. So thank you so much. Also, someone who cares deeply both about public safety and about building new things, the chair of the subcommittee on capital projects of the Finance Committee and the City Council, Councilmember Vanessa Gibson. Thank you for your leadership. Look, as we've got half a year under our belt. The big picture, we are the safest big city in America, and we continue with a whole host of efforts to get safer. But there's also real work we have to do and some real specific things we have to address. At the outset of this year, look, we were all quite sober about the fact that trying to repeat what happened in 2017 was going to be very, very difficult. 2017, record-setting year in every sense. Crime levels that had not been seen since the 1950s. But what's happening overall is the NYPD is on pace on so many fronts to surpass 2017. We got a whole another half year to go, but we see some really wonderful work happening. Now, Chief Monahan will go into the details, but the bottom line, crime remains at record lows. And at the end of June, so 6 months into the year, total crime down 1.8% year-to-date compared to last year. So almost 2% reduction in overall crime this point this year compared to the same point last year. Again, that makes this the lowest 6-month period for overall crime in the modern era. Now, that said, we know that everything we're doing has to be felt in every community. This vision we have, neighborhood policing, precision policing, we're not satisfied until we see the results happening absolutely everywhere. New Yorkers need to feel just as safe at 138th and 3rd as they do at 38th and 3rd. That is the vision of neighborhood policing. And we've seen some real progress in the Bronx in particular in recent years, but we are constantly reminded of things that challenge us and things that we have to work harder on. And obviously, one very, very, very painful example was in the last few weeks. This whole city is still mourning the death of Junior Guzman Feliz, a young man of such promise who wanted to serve in this department. If he had lived, he might have, I think, very well fulfilled that dream and be serving right here in this precinct even. We need to have good young men and women come forward and to support particularly our Explorers program. And that, I want to commend the Police Foundation for setting up a scholarship in Junior's name to encourage more young men and women who are part of the Explorers family. That's so important. But the bottom line is, in the Bronx, we know we're going to have to do exactly what we've done all over the city, fight block by block to make sure we're bringing down crime and throw at the problem whatever is needed. You see a big complement of officers that have come to precincts in the Bronx through the Summer All Out initiative. You see important actions being taken strategically to shore up any area that needs it. This is what precision policing is all about, and the NYPD continues to refine its strategies. The point that was made earlier by the commissioner, trying to make sure that we give our officers the kind of facilities that allow them to do the best work they can do, modern facilities for a modern new type of policing. That's why this new precinct facility is going to be so exciting. So what it's going to allow for, more opportunity for training in the precinct, a lot more space for our officers to do their work, physical fitness areas, but also that community space, so important. Neighborhood policing works because of constant dialogue between police and community. Having more community space to meet in allows for that dialogue to deepen. And I got to tell you, wherever I've gone all over the city, I get extraordinary feedback from community residents who've experienced the results of neighborhood policing, who feel that they have a personal bond with the police officers who serve them. It's making a huge difference, and this new facility is going to help in the 4-0. So, look, the bottom line is we are the safest big city in America. We have more to do to keep getting safer, but we are confident that we can get safer and in every neighborhood of this city. A few words in Spanish. Nueva York es la ciudad grande más segura de nuestro país. Gracias al NYPD, el crimen sigue alcanzando niveles históricamente bajos. Sin embargo, los neoyorquinos debemos sentirnos seguros en toda la ciudad, ya sea en Midtown o en Mott Haven. Por eso, estamos construyendo un edificio nuevo para el cuartel número 40 y avanzando en nuestro compromiso con el plan policial vecinal en todo el Bronx. With that, turn to Chief of Department, Terry Monahan.
Good morning, everyone. I get the honor of sitting here in place of Chief Pollack today to go through the numbers for the first 6 months. All right, so I'm happy to say through the first 6 months of 2018, overall crime in New York City continues to fall. We have exceeded the historic reductions we achieved at this time last year. Overall crime for the first 6 months of the year is down 1.8%, 853 crimes, compared to the first 6 months of 2017. This is the lowest 6-month period for overall crime in the CompStat era. The NYPD has accomplished this while making 11.5% fewer overall arrests compared to last year. That's 17,000 fewer arrests this year compared to last year. Looking more closely, there are several specific crime categories with historic lows for this 6-month period. Robberies were down 6.4%, burglaries down 5.4%, and grand larceny autos down 2.2%. Shooting incidents are also at an unprecedented 6-month low, down 5.6% or 20 fewer shootings year to date. But not everything is down, and we still face challenges. Murder is up 8.1% citywide. Through June 30th, there were 147 murders, or 11 more year to date compared to 2017. 147 is still the second lowest 6-month number in modern era, surpassed only by last year's historically low numbers. And as we sit here today, we've reduced our citywide murder increase to just 2 year-to-date as of this morning, 152 to 150. The Bronx is driving the murder year-to-date with 51 homicides, an increase of 21 murders from 2017. In those cases in the Bronx, we have made arrests in 33 of the cases, or almost 70% of the murders that have occurred this year in the Bronx. Just as overall shootings have decreased citywide year-to-date, they have also decreased in the Bronx year-to-date, down 7, 102 versus 109. However, fatal shootings have gone up by 12 in the Bronx, 29 by 17 compared to 2017. We see this trend throughout the rest of the city as well, with 82 murders citywide this year by way of shooting, an increase of 20, 82 versus 62 compared with 2017. So as shootings go down, people who have died when they were shot has gone up this year. I want to mention one other category where we're seeing increases citywide year to date, and that is rape. Citywide rape is up 33.2% for the first 6 months of 2018. However, we continue to be encouraged by the increase in this highly underreported crime. Specifically, we see a 45% increase in reported domestic rapes, perhaps the most historically underreported category of rape. I also want to note that with more complaints, we are seeing more arrests being made. We are up 37.4% in arrests for rape this year. As always, we continue to encourage survivors of sexual assault to report it, to continue to come forward for current or past crimes, knowing the NYPD is here to support you and to fully investigate these often underreported crimes so we can get those who are accountable off our streets. As we switch over to the month of June, for the month of June, we've seen 2017's historic reductions pushed even lower in several crime categories. Again, robbery with its lowest number ever, down 8.5%. Burglary, down 2.3%. And grand larceny auto, down 1.3%. A couple of categories went up. We went up in grand larceny, 4.7%. And rape for the month of June was up 17%. Overall crime is up slightly for the month of June in New York City, a 0.3 increase citywide for 26 total crimes. Once again, this is the second lowest June in the modern era, surpassed only by last year's historic June numbers. Transit, we've shown down 5.5% for the month of June, and housing has showed us an increase of 7% in the month of June. Shooting incidents also reached a new historic low for the month of June, 72 total, down 8.9% or 7 fewer shootings. Although once again we see fatal shootings citywide are up 6 for the month of June compared to 2017, 19 versus 13, which has contributed to the increase in citywide murders for June. For the month of June, murder is up 34% citywide, 8 crimes. And again, we're back in the Bronx because it is the driver of this increase. 13 murders this June versus 6 in June of 2017. That's an increase of 7 murders or 116%. Once again, just as we are seeing citywide, although overall shootings have decreased in the Bronx by 2, fatal shootings in the Bronx are up by 4, 9 versus 5 compared to 2017. Included in that number is what the mayor's mentioned before, was the murder of Alessandro Jr. Felix Guzman. As you know, thanks to the tremendous help from the community and the great investigative work done by the Bronx detectives, 4-8 Detective Squad and Bronx Homicide, 12 arrests have been made in this heinous crime. And we also continue with our practice of precision policing here in the Bronx. Just 2 weeks ago, a major federal case takedown was taken right here in this neighborhood, the Melrose Jackson houses. 20 individuals were arrested. They were arrested and indicted federally for a case that includes narcotics trafficking, involves 2 homicides, and 26 separate shooting incidences attributed to these 20 members. It's cases like this, with the tremendous work being done by our investigators, working with our prosecutors to secure pre-indictments and in cooperation with the community, that we will attack this spike in violence. And now, as we move into the heart of the summer, the NYPD is poised to continue its overall reduction in crime. Our dedicated cops, like Brooklyn North Warrants Detective Miguel Soto, who was shot in the line of duty just last week, demonstrate every day that they are willing to go into harm's way on behalf of all New Yorkers. Thankfully, Detective Soto will make a full recovery. I want to commend him and his team for their exceptional police work. Adding to our already hard-working group of cops and support staff across the 5 boroughs, getting the job done, will be our almost 300 summer-out officers that are currently in place in our commands right now, and our most recent class of over 750 Police Academy graduates. These additional resources will only bolster our relentless efforts as we work hard to maintain our advances and further reduce crime in our nation's biggest city and safest city. Thank you very much.
So let's do this. If you have any questions about the crime numbers, we'll do that first, and then if you have questions...
Wait. We're jumping ahead. Got some elected officials.
Oh, really?
Yes, we do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm here to help.
All right.
First of all, I'll just give a chance for the elected officials who represent the community served by the 4-0 to offer their thoughts on this announcement today. And first want to turn to the council member who represents where we are right now and thank her for her leadership, Council Member Diana Ayala.
Thank you. And thank you to my colleagues for being here today. I'm actually really excited about the building. I know that we've been talking about it for many, many years, longer than I've been here. And I'm sorry to see it go because it's going to actually land in my colleague, Councilmember Salamanca's district. But I know that you'll continue to be a presence in my district as well. So I'm excited about that. But having said that, I wanted to just thank you for the acknowledgement that while crime has significantly gone down citywide, and I agree that it has, it hasn't been reduced enough in communities of color. And my colleague and I, Vanessa Gibson, have been to too many shooting responses in the last few weeks. That is unacceptable. We should not live as a community in fear. And any assistance that we can as elected officials provide to the NYPD, I'm hopeful that you will use us as a resource, but I also, that's a huge deal to acknowledge that, because the last time that we had this conversation, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, there was an acknowledgement then that crime had gone down. I was asked to give a quote, and it was right on off of the heels of my car getting shot up on my own block. And my 12-year-old son was downstairs walking the dog, and ran upstairs crying hysterically because he had never witnessed anything like that. And that is the reality for the people that live in the South Bronx and in East Harlem. It is our reality every single day. And so we need to do better. We need to ensure that Alessandro is the last kid that has to be subjected to something so heinous as what happened to him a few weeks ago. That his mother, is an example to other mothers who have to endure this day in and day out. This is, gun violence is something that has been a consistent part of my life. I am 45 years old, and since I was 5 years old, I can remember incident after incident after incident. So while I am really excited and I applaud the mayor for his efforts, and I know that we're progressing in the right direction, I also am grateful for the acknowledgement that we need to do more in communities of color. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, and very much appreciate what you said, and we share that urgent commitment. Thank you very much. And now the Councilmember who will be hosting the new precinct, Councilmember Rafael Salamanca.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was telling the mayor, I know you're in Diana Ayala's district, but welcome to the South Bronx. And whenever he visits the Bronx and it's 90 degrees or more, he should throw on a guayabera.
That'll be my fashion choice going forward.
As the former president of the 41st Precinct Council, I know firsthand how positive community and police relations can have on improving public safety. And I'm really excited and I'm thrilled that the 40 Precinct will be now housed in a few years in my district. It's a much needed resource, especially near the hub, which, as you may know, Mr. Mayor and Police Commissioner, that the hub, 149th Street and 3rd Avenue, is ground zero for the opioid crisis that's happening not only in my district but throughout the city of New York. The hub, which is 2 blocks away, is the second highest foot traffic area in Times Square. And, time and time again, I have written letters, Mr. Mayor, even as in the beginning of my of being in elected office, and I've requested a bigger police presence there. I've worked closely with Inspector Hennessy. He has tried. I've met with the police commissioner, and I know that they've put more police resources, but much more is needed. And I feel that this precinct, which will be 2 blocks away from the hub, will bring that police presence that's very much needed in the community to make my constituents and everyone that visits the Bronx at that busy intersection much safer. So I'm excited about this announcement, and I can't wait till the groundbreaking starts.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Commissioner.
Okay, so if you have any questions about the crime numbers, we'll do that first, and then if you have questions about the new precinct station house, we'll answer them next. So any questions about the crime numbers? Yep.
I'm glad that you mentioned, because I had the figures with me to beat you up on, unfortunately. Now, 2 weeks ago, there was a triple homicide in Soundview. The police have a photo of the suspect. People in the neighborhood have told me after the investigation that they are afraid now to walk in the neighborhood. They're afraid to be shot. They're afraid from being robbed, from the drug activity, the gang activity there. Can you update me and the community on what is happening with this suspect? You know who he is, you have him in custody, and what are you doing to make the neighborhood safer? Because I know that you have a 20% less police presence in the Bronx from 3 years ago.
Yeah, go ahead.
Listen, the case, it's not Soundview. You're talking about the triple homicide over by Castle Hill House. Correct. This was an ongoing dispute between a couple of families that knew one another. We have an identified perpetrator that we believe is out of state at this point. Our warrants team is hunting him currently.
So, and I have the numbers from January 1st, 2018 to now. We have an increase of police officers in the Bronx overall. And then we also have an increase from January 1st, 2017 to July 10th, 2018. January 1st, 17, there were 2,561. Now there's 2,661. So that...
I'm going back to November 16th when I was at Borough.
No, I'm talking about from January 17th. So there's the numbers that I have right now.
We're contesting your numbers.
Right.
So we'll be happy to compare notes. I'm just saying for the record, we contest your numbers.
Yes.
About what you believe to be behind this uptick in crime in the Bronx?
It's not an uptick in crime, it's an uptick in homicide. It's a homicide, there's been the crews, that's one of the case takedowns I just talked about, focus right here. That's been historically problematic. You know, we're looking at it, it's 30% gang-related. So obviously we want to be able to, we look at, you know, a weird thing this year is less people shot, but more people dying after they get shot. Listen, obviously you get hit by a bullet, an inch can make a difference one way or the other. So that's one of the things we're looking at, but again, we want to focus in on the individuals who are doing these. And with the homicides here, 70%, if you commit that homicide, you've been arrested. So that's one good thing I could say here in the Bronx. If you commit this crime, very good chance that our great detectives are going to get you and put you away for a long time.
So when we did our analysis out of the precincts in the Bronx, it's 2 of the precincts. So they were up by 15 as of last Sunday. And in 2 precincts, 11 of those murders occurred. So that's the 4-0 and the 4-8. So we're putting additional resources into both precincts. So it is localized. It's not any comfort to the murder victims and their families, but it is localized to 2 precincts. Yep.
Commissioner and Mayor, this is a question directed to both of you. My name is Kendall Taggart. I'm a journalist at BuzzFeed News, and we recently wrote about an officer who filed a sexual harassment.
We get to that when we go off topic? Okay, we're talking about crime now?
We'll come to you for sure. But just
Okay.
anything on the 2 updates today, the crime stats and the new precinct. Let's just get that out of the way and we'll go to other police matters.
Juliet?
The rape statistics, they continue to go up. Is there any sort of program or initiative that the department is taking to look at that, or to get the numbers down, or to have an awareness campaign?
Well, it's not that we're looking to get those numbers down. I mean, rape, we always know, has been a often underreported crime. Statistically, nationally, they say it's one of the most underreported crimes there are. So we've been pushing people to come out and report it, get this information, and let us know that our Special Victims Squad is going to do the investigations and make the arrests when appropriate on that. So we encourage people to come out and make these reports. So when it goes up, that's the one crime we look at going up that you got to weigh, that it's actually a good thing because more people are coming forward, and especially when we see it in domestic violence cases, because those are the ones that never come forward. Now we're seeing a huge uptick in people coming forward.
Tony?
Neighborhood policing is a big part of your strategy, and it's a big investment that you made in personnel and money. I've asked a number of times in these briefings, when are you going to be able to produce the surveys that you have going on with rank and file and the public? Are you any closer to releasing that? Because it's been several months now.
Yeah, we're getting closer, Tony. We're just not there yet. We did the internal survey. I saw the results of that. I was briefed on that before our last crime press briefing. So hopefully they'll come out sometime in the fall. Yep. Ashley?
Chief O'Neill, Chief Monahan. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that gang-related homicides are at 30%. I'm just wondering if you're seeing that going up or down, and if you're seeing spikes among particular gangs.
Now, we're seeing that being fairly steady. When it comes to the homicide, it's around 30%. When we come to non-fatal shootings, it's around 40%, where there's some sort of gang nexus. And those are the ones that we know about where we've identified either we always identify the victim, but if we have identified the perpetrator. So that's 30 to 40% has been fairly consistent.
Rich?
Just regarding the rape stats, how many of those are older cases and how many are like current cases?
We're seeing that come back and level off right now in the month of June. So it was 15% were older cases, 14% is what it was last year. So for this month, we've seen the older cases level off.
Yep.
There appears to be a rise in random crimes. There was the NYU student that was assaulted yesterday, a subway rider struck by a man holding a metal pipe. Back in May, there was a couple that had come into town. They were assaulted while celebrating their 10th anniversary, and now claim that they don't want to come to New York City anymore. What are you doing to handle these types of crimes?
All right, again, this is a city of 8.6 million people, and there are always going to be some individualized acts that occur. But in the 3 incidences, the 3 women that were struck down in Lower Manhattan the other day, it all happened within 12 minutes, and we made an arrest just moments after that. We had a very horrible attempted rape in the 2-0 precinct, where we were able to get photos out right away and with help from the community, solve that case, and within less than 24 hours, make an arrest. We had the man on the train that was hit in the face with the pipe. people on that train took photos of him, gave that to us. We put it out, and immediately he was identified. So again, this is what the Commissioner, Mary, always talk about, this shared responsibility, that everyone's working together. And quickly, we're getting these individuals off the street. There is a small percentage of people within this city that need to be arrested and off the street, and I can tell you that the NYPD is committed to making sure we get them off the street and keep them off the street.
See a rise in crime involving homeless individuals, by any chance?
We're going to have to get back to you with that number, okay? In the back?
So could you talk a little bit more about this community center and the upcoming precinct, how you envision it? Would it be kind of like a room like this where you have meetings, or would it be more of a community facility, and I guess you'll get input from the
Yeah, it'll be both. It'll be for NYPD functions, where the community come in and can talk to the precinct commander and the NCOs and the steady sector cops and the response officers. But it'll also be used for non-NYPD events too. So it'll be a multi-purpose room, not just NYPD specific. It'll be a place for people in the community to meet. I certainly hope so. Any other questions about the crime numbers? Yep.
So take like an area like the South Bronx, do you see the opioid issue playing into these new homicide numbers?
No, we don't. Again, we look at gang, we look at domestic, we look at just basic disputes that happen. We have not seen any homicides that we could really tie into drugs, to the heroin trade.
But we also have to, I mean, that's a good point, but we also have to take a look at the number of overdoses citywide. I'm not sure if the numbers in 17 have been finalized yet, but it'll be about 1,600. So we're talking about five times the homicide rate. So, and we're doing a lot of things on that front also. Tina?
Helping you? Is that something you're using, the gang database?
The gang database is something we use as an investigative tool for intelligence. You know, we don't target based on the gang database, but when we have a shooting, like we had a triple shooting in University Heights recently, well, we know that was on the anniversary of Junta Perez, who was a YG and had been targeting people up there. So we knew that if there was going to be retaliation, or where it may have came from, was over the Mott Haven houses over here. So this sort of gives us the intelligence. We know where to deploy our personnel and where to focus our investigative purposes on.
When a precinct commander comes in for CompStat now in a precinct that has crime that's going up and they have NCOs, what are they being drilled on to do more of?
How are they, and I run the CompStat every Thursday morning, so the main thing we want to know is how they're working hand in hand with the squad. If there was a shooting in an area or a robbery pattern within their zone, how are they sitting down with the detectives finding out what they need to do? How are they reaching out to the residents that they know in the neighborhood that can give them information? Are they going to businesses to get extra video for the squad? They may show the perpetrator leaving. Do they know the perpetrator? Because a lot of the crimes are done by people who live within the neighborhood. These cops are out there every day. Have we shown them that video? Can they identify based on the video? I know that kid, he's here, he's there. These are the sort of things we're talking about. How involved are we in just the everyday life that's going on within that sector, and how they can keep the people safe?
Do you find that the commanders have good answers to those questions? And if they do, then what do you do?
When they have good answers, then they're going well. As long as you have an answer for your crime and how you're trying to solve it, how you're trying to keep the people safe, that's fine. It's when a commander doesn't have an answer, or doesn't know, or hasn't utilized all his resources, well, then it could be a little different.
And then, David, this is a program it's up and running for 3 years, but in some precincts it's a lot less than that. So we have to make sure that the precinct commanders they know what we're looking for. You know, we just don't want to bring them down there, put them up at the podium and ask them a question that they might not have a response to, something they've never answered before. So we have to make sure we do our best to let them know what our expectations are of the NCOs. Any other questions about crime?
Any kind of a success rate that you could speak about with the violence interrupters that have been introduced in the precincts to have now?
I look at the work they did over in Queensbridge. I know there's been some shootings in Queensbridge this year, but I think they went 15 months without a shooting or a homicide, which is incredible. And a lot of that work was done, of course, by PSA 10 and the 114 precinct. A lot of it was done by the violence interrupters, too. And Erica Ford down in Queens South, while I can't give you specific instances because they were prevented, she's fully committed to helping keep this city safe, and she does a great job out there with her people.
They'll be going into the 4-H. I believe that's what we're
No, I'd have to find that out and get back to you on that. All right? Any other questions about crime? How about questions about the new station house?
All right.
It does have air conditioning.
Yeah, that's the important one.
All right, let's go
Crime in general?
off topic. Yep.
Police.
Back to BuzzFeed.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about a case we recently wrote about an officer who had filed a sexual harassment complaint and then says that afterwards she was ostracized by her fellow officers. She was disciplined unfairly and then sent to an alcohol treatment program she didn't need. I wanted to know if either of you had any plans to reach out to her or if there's anything in place now that would prevent something like that from happening in the future.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about what's going forward here. That case is, I think it started in 2007. I think it was finally, there was a disposition on it in 2014. But in January, I established the Equity and Inclusion Office under Tracy Cassie, Deputy Commissioner Cassie. EEO falls under her now. And then we've also established a 3-person panel to look at our whole disciplinary process going forward. And they'll be coming out with some recommendations. I think it was 120 days, so there's probably about 100 days left. I'm actually meeting with them next week, so. I haven't looked at the case. This has a final disposition on it. I did read the article. You know, it's from what I read, it's a tough experience for her, but as to the particulars, I didn't read the case, so.
Do you have any plans to reach out to her?
Not at this time, no.
And Mayor, is there anything you'd like to add?
Again, I'm not familiar with the details, but what I'll say is we constantly are looking at the disciplinary process, and it's something, as the Commissioner said, that we want to make sure is effective and fair, and we have to keep updating. So the bottom line is nothing is static. This is something that's constantly evolving, and we want to make sure is fair for all the realities we face today.
Fair as of today?
Look, I have been very impressed. I'll just speak from my own experience as someone who came into working with the NYPD not having seen the fullness of the operation previously and coming in with an open mind. I've been impressed by the disciplinary process, by the thoroughness of it. I think it's been very clear under this commissioner and under Commissioner Bratton. They sent a very clear message of consistency in that process. But again, we have to constantly look to make sure we're working to update it at all times.
I've had this job now for almost 22 months. I look at the major disciplinary cases, they come before me. And I've been a cop for 35 and a half years, so I think I do provide that sense of fairness as we move forward. Yep. Next to Tony.
Yeah, Commissioner, about your disciplinary panel, actually. 3 people are involved, I think it's going to go public in 120 days. Are they taking input from the public, from advocacy groups? I mean, is it just these 3 people and they make the recommendation and that's it? How does that
Larry, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the panel is,
No, you got to need a mic. Need a mic.
Already got one there.
The panel is started their work. They're gathering information from the department. They've been in communication with all sorts of external stakeholders, and they plan to meet with those folks and groups and get their input on the department. The panel is independent, so they'll make their own work plan, but we're supporting them, and they do plan to seek input from a wide variety of external stakeholders and external overseers of the department. I don't know specifically what they're going to do about the public, but any member of the public is welcome to write to them or communicate with them.
Tony?
I heard there was a 12th arrest in Junior's case. Is there going to be, you see this going any further, 13th, 14th arrest?
Chief Aubrey will talk about that. Bill?
Right now, we have made the 12th arrest, the 11th and 12th arrest. We linked them to the chasing of Junior during the incident. If you look at this incident and you look at how the public has helped us, how the neighborhood policing program came together, working with the public, we had over hundreds of Crime Stopper tips coming in, a lot of resourceful information coming out of that, and that's where we got to our 12th arrest. So right now we've identified these 12 individuals. They're arrested. They're all in, charged with murder 1 and murder 2. And we're not currently looking for any additional people, but that could always change. I encourage the public to continue to cooperate with us, call in. I can't thank this community. We made a commitment to the family, to Junior's family, to unturn every stone. And I think we've worked very, very hard to go through the evidence, working with this community, working with the public, and we've unturned every stone. So I'm satisfied right now that these 12, they've been linked to this incident. And the district attorney, I want to thank the district attorney as well, because they've been working hard with us as well.
Can you specify about where the linkage is between the incident, Junior's incident, and the 5-2 incident on the Bronx River Parkway? There was some linkage that was alluded to in previous press conferences, but can you specify anything more at this point?
At this point, they're part of a gang, and but we don't see anything other than they're part of a gang. We don't see any linkage to the incident with Junior and that incident as a motivator. So at this point, I would say no, they're not linked together.
It's something that it is something that we're still investigating. There could be some possible linkage. It's all Trinitarios and different clans within the Trinitarios, Sunset Clan, Versero Clan. So there may be some linkage with something that is still being investigated through the prosecutor's offices.
Can you tell a little bit about what this whole suspect, what was his role, or what you believe his role to be?
The 12th suspect we have him in one of the vehicles, and we also have him chasing Junior.
Marcia?
Commissioner, I wonder if you could tell us about the decision to send the counterterrorism plan to the mayor in Canada. And really, I wonder if you think that the lawmakers in Washington will give you a hard time in terms of counterterrorism funds, because they're always trying to cut from the city counterterrorism funds, and if it'll make it more difficult for you to defend yours.
And so our intelligence bureau makes a decision on how we transport the executives in the city. As far as using the plane, we did not see any obstacles to that. I don't think there's going to be pushback from Washington on that. And I mean, bottom line, the mayor came back to go to a street renaming for a detective that was brutally murdered a year ago. So I think that has to be taken into consideration also. Juliet?
There have been several precincts that I'm aware of, the 109, the 112, and Midtown North, where this mailbox phishing is a problem, out of the public mailboxes on the corners, and people's checks are being, deleted and rewritten, and what's happening with that, and how do people help,
Yeah, Chief Orby will speak about that.
That's a scam that's going on citywide. Our Grand Larceny Division's working on it. So you have different components of that. You have the person that actually does the phishing. So they have people that go out there, they go to certain mailboxes. They also have keys to some of the mailboxes, which we've identified. And then you have, at the end, you have the person cashing the check. And then in between, you have different entities. You have the people washing the check. So there's certain ways that you could change over the ink. You have the coordinator, the one that's pretty much quarterbacking the whole operation. And then you may have some outside entities involved from, the bank and maybe the Postal Service. So it's a very, very complex type of scheme. We're identifying people every day that are part of it. We're working with the local district attorney's office on these cases, working with the postal inspectors. So we're making a lot of headway on these cases.
Have there been any arrests of groups or organizations?
We just made an arrest in the Bronx this week. I'll get you the details afterwards. Okay.
Grace?
There are Staten Island reporters been looking into a case on the South Shore, a number of cases. There have been something like 40 cars that have been vandalized on the South Shore of Staten Island, keyed really deeply, causing a lot of damage. I'm wondering if that's on your radar and what kind of thing you know about it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get the investigative chief out in Staten Island to give you an update. We can do that. We'll get you in touch with him this afternoon, okay?
Couple more on police topics.
Right here on the left.
Just want to follow up on the use of the NYPD plane to transport the mayor. I guess it would be one thing if it was a plane that had multiple uses. In this case, the plane was kind of specifically bought with federal funds to use for anti-terror, and I'm wondering if that gave you any pause in using it simply to transport an elected official, but also did you clear that use either with Homeland Security, or have you heard from them since?
No to either one. It didn't ask for clearance, and I haven't heard from them. It is a multi-use plane. We use it primarily for detecting radiation out in the shipping lanes, but there are other uses it can be that we use it for. So.
Question on speed cameras, Mr. Mayor. Your predecessor set up speed cameras, and at the press conference at PS 81 in Riverdale, DOT said it surveyed a street which everybody thought was in front of the school. However, DOT surveyed a street 7 blocks away, which was behind the exit of the Russian Mission, which led to the Henry Hudson Parkway South, into a private community also, and on a downhill slope where they said over 90%.
Tell me your bottom line, because I can't follow all your detail. What's your bottom line?
Where they said over 90% of the vehicles were speeding even 1 mile over then 30-mile speed limit. You're pushing to renew speed cameras.
Yes.
Senator Klein did a survey of the street in front of the school and got much less numbers. Are you willing to survey the street in front of the
We look at this all the time. Look, elected officials who are opposed to speed cameras because they think it will please a constituency are constantly trying to promote this idea that there's something about them that's not right. That's absolutely false based on all the facts we have. The facts are speed cameras bring down speeding around schools 60% already. 60% reduction in speeding. Those are the facts. Making sure our children are safe. There's no reason in the world for any elected official to oppose a speed camera to placate some constituency in their community. The only people who should be upset about speed cameras are people who speed.
This is not about an elected official. It's about, are you willing to resurvey the street to see how many people are speeding?
We constantly look at the question of what the speed cameras are yielding in terms of impact. We're very satisfied it's been consistent across the city, reduces speeding consistently. We'll happily look at any situation. But really what the fact is that we not only need the speed cameras we have, and there's only a couple of weeks left for Albany to act, we need a lot more around schools to make sure kids are safe. That's the bottom line.
Last call, please. Last call, please.
Immigration, Mr. Mayor, we're being told a couple of elderly immigrants who were detained at an upstate New York military base.
Let me just hold you on that to see if there's anything else police related, then we'll come right to you.
Yep.
Just on the shooting in Woodside, do you have anything you can tell us about that incident?
Billy, 108?
Wait. Do you have it, or if you don't have it?
Talking about the homicide up in 108 last night?
Yeah, that case there, that victim at a little past midnight last night, he was found with a gunshot wound. We have him on video with 2 other individuals. We're trying to locate those 2 individuals, and the autopsy has to be done today as well. We're looking for evidence on that, but pretty much right now we're doing a video canvas, and we're also trying to track those 2 individuals.
Thanks very much.
Wait, last there. Let's just go.
Officer Brian Groves, it's been 6 years now. He's one of the few officers who were shot in the line of duty in this case since the assault. Yeah, we did a story about it today. And we still keep hearing from, BCPI that the investigation is ongoing, no arrests. It seems very odd because these cases tend to be solved very quickly. Do you have any information about that? Why this investigation hasn't been solved?
I'm going to have to get back to you. I haven't been updated. I haven't been briefed on that case recently, so I'm going to get back to you.
Was killed in.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. Yep.
Okay, now we'll go, thank you. We're going to go to other topics way back.
Give it a second.
Actually, let's give that 1 second to clear. Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
About to restart. Last chance. Okay, everyone ready? And way back, way back, way back. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, a couple was detained apparently in an upstate military base as they presented their NYCID. They were trying to have a 4th of July celebration with their son-in-law, who happens to be a sergeant there. So I guess the question would be, as far as the documentation, what we should tell our viewers, are they valid on these military bases, the NYC municipal ID?
I think it's a very fair question, but I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. If someone doesn't have any other ID and they present an NYC ID, as a general rule, it's better to have some form of ID than none. One of the very positive outcomes of NYC ID has been more and more New Yorkers actually having a form of identification that's official on them, which is really important. In the event that they come into contact with the police, it's extremely important to have ID. It's one of the reasons why often people do not have to be taken to a precinct if they have ID on them. This is one of the things that really NYPD was very enthusiastic about when we came up with this idea originally, borrowing from the model of other cities. And now, as you may have seen, this model is being adopted all over the country, in bigger cities, smaller cities, because it's just virtuous for more and more people to have ID. The second question, or the specific question you raised about the military bases, if anyone is on a military base and any individual there chooses to act on the fact that they're undocumented, that has nothing to do with what kind of ID they're carrying. If they're undocumented, and then unfortunately someone chooses to take action against them, that's going to happen whether they're carrying a local ID, a state ID, whatever kind of ID. So I think we have to separate the two questions. NYC ID, I'm absolutely convinced, has been a positive for our communities and certainly for law enforcement. But what we're seeing is if you go on to a military base, it's an unpredictable situation if you're undocumented. I think that's very unfortunate, but that's the reality.
You don't think it's in their code of protocol not to accept the municipal ID as an ID?
And just think about it for a minute. What if someone had a passport, they would use a passport, right? If they were documented in that fashion, they'd use a passport. If they happen to have a municipal ID and someone asks for ID, it's better to present an ID than not. But the bottom line is the root cause of this is someone choosing to act against someone undocumented. In this city, we don't do that. We don't believe in that. We don't think that's fair. If, again, in my view, unfortunately, if someone were to take that stance on a military base to act on the fact that they knew someone was undocumented, it has nothing to do with what ID they're carrying. It has to do with the fact that they're undocumented. Yeah.
As part of implementing Raise the Age, there's this mandate to get 16 and 17-year-olds off of Rikers Island. There's been a goal of having it happen by October 1. Do you think that deadline is realistic? And how's the progress coming along?
We're working on that deadline right now. We need help from the state, and we've been in constant touch with the state, both on the executive and the legislative level, to make sure that we get some of the support. As you know, originally, when I absolutely believe Raise the Age was the right policy. When it was passed last year, there was an open consideration and discussion about making sure it did not create a hardship for localities in terms of how quickly it was being implemented. We also wanted to make sure it wasn't an unfunded mandate. Unfortunately, at this point, it really does appear to be an unfunded mandate, so I'm very unhappy about that. I hope we can do something about that going forward. But we want to make sure we're getting the support from the state to be able to meet that deadline. If we get that support, I'm very hopeful we will.
Are there any particular pieces of support that you're looking for, anything in particular you need from the state?
The bottom line is we just need to align the facilities we'll use, and we need some help from the state in terms of getting access to the right facilities.
On the NYCHA announcement that you made last night, you found out about the failures in the lead inspections more than 2 years ago now, around May of 2016. Why did it take you 2 years to decide to go back through and inspect essentially all the apartments that might have lead? Why not do that earlier? I mean, certainly the feds couldn't have asked you not to do it during the investigation.
Well, in fact, no one suggested we do it in the form that we're doing it now. This was an idea that was developed by our chair, Stan Brezhnev at NYCHA, and General Manager Vito Mastacholo. What I think's happened here, David, is this was an issue that for years and years essentially wasn't core to the public discourse. I was around when Local Law 1 was passed early in the last decade. I think for a lot of people there was a feeling that that really addressed the lead issue once and for all, and obviously lead paint had been outlawed for quite a while. We were not hearing reports of problems. The first time it really reemerges as an issue is when the Southern District investigation begins. And as this has proceeded, we've been trying to figure out all the things that need to be done here, essentially starting from scratch as an issue because it had not been something, just think about all the last years in this city before that investigation. It was not something that was being pointed to as a problem. Obviously, the inspections stopped in the previous administration. I think that's the core mistake here. But as we have gone deeper and deeper into the issue, all of us, the question got raised of how do you get to an actual baseline here? Because you'll remember there was some work done during the Giuliani administration that defined which apartments in public housing might have lead and which didn't. There was a methodology required by the federal government, which was a sampling methodology, not an exhaustive review of each apartment. Federal regulations changed over time. This has been something of a moving target. What Stan Brezhnev and Vito Mostacciolo put forward, I think, was audacious and smart. They said, let's do once and for all a baseline study of all apartments that have any possibility of having lead. Let's be able to rule out a lot of these apartments. I'm certain we will. Let me just finish. I'm certain we will rule out. For example, we're saying from the beginning, any apartment built after 1978, we're absolutely certain does not have lead because it was outlawed. And apartments that were individually reviewed and certified as non-lead previously, we have faith in. What we don't have faith in is apartments that were not looked at individually. So we're going back through all of them. It's a huge undertaking. But the good news is when it's done, we will have a perfect view of what's happening. And that's why I say it's really now a Vision Zero mentality. The more we've looked at this, we said, you know what? The Vision Zero concept fits here. We've seen a 90% reduction in lead poisoning in New York City since 2005. And it's a huge, huge amount of progress. We actually want to see if we can once and for all end lead poisoning in New York City. And the NYCHA piece of it is actually less than 10% of the cases in the city. Most of them are in private housing, which is why we announced last week that anyone in private housing whose child is found to have that 5 microgram or above level, we will go and do a specific inspection through our health department. But I think the important thing here on NYCHA is the realization that rather than depend on methodologies of the past and flawed information from previous administrations, we're going to once and for all define the universe. And that's going to allow us to constantly shrink the number of apartments that need attention.
What I don't understand from your answer is what changed between when you found out in 2016 that this was a problem. Certainly the DOH has all the health data about children that are sick, and you knew that the inspections weren't being done. You knew you didn't have a baseline then. Why did it take 2 years to make this decision?
Because sometimes it literally, when you're in the middle of, as all of us are, running a whole host of things, it takes a while for some new ideas to develop. Obviously, there had never been a survey of all the units in NYCHA. So think about this for a moment. Lead paint is outlawed in New York City in 1960. Lead paint is outlawed federally in 1978. Local Law 1 is 2004. In that whole sweep of time, over half a century, no one thought, literally no one thought, to survey every apartment. As we've talked about it more and more, consulted with HPD, which has done great work on inspections, health department, the idea arose, wait a minute, why don't we do the ultimate baseline study? It's literally a new idea that came out of a lot of discussion. But I think the other piece that needs to be looked at that's really important in this discussion, when we think about any area of public health or public policy, the fact we've had a 90% reduction in lead paint poisoning since 2005 indicates that so much progress was being made. I think attention was on some other areas, honestly, where there were bigger, sharper problems. But now I think the good news here is all of our energies and resources are going to go into eradicating this once and for all. One more.
Do you not want to draw attention to this issue in 2016, 2017 because of your reelection?
No, of course not. That's not the issue. Again, I don't know if you heard everything I just said. This issue had not been in the public domain.
You would have brought it to the public domain by doing what you did yesterday.
Listen to what I'm saying. When I ran for mayor, some of you were there, this was not an issue in New York City. The fact is that we had seen constant reductions in lead paint poisoning in NYCHA and outside of NYCHA. Again, I want to emphasize to everyone, well over 90% of the cases we have in this city are outside of NYCHA. As we have gained more information, it is clear that there's a way to address this that might eradicate this problem once and for all. That is something that was on nobody's mind. I mean, go and look at all the different voices in the city and take 2013 as a great starting point. This discussion was not part of the public discourse. I would have happily embraced these options if we had known about them. But the good news is now we have a 3-point approach that I think is going to make a huge difference. Survey 130,000 apartments with X-ray technology to once and for all know what's going on underneath those layers of paint and to rule out a number of apartments. Once we know an apartment doesn't have any lead, we no longer have to worry about that apartment. We can put all our energy into the other apartments. 2, a much more intensive outreach to any families that have a child who's experienced any elevated level. Now, that 5 microgram level is a very stringent level. The good news is if a child is exposed at that level and it's caught and addressed, that number can go down very quickly, and you can avert problems. So we're going to do heavy outreach to make sure there's follow-up appointments and all the support those families need. And then for the public and for all of you, quarterly reporting, that will start next month. And we're going to do what wasn't done in the past, which is to break out the NYCHA numbers from all the other numbers. So you can see literally what's happening to the numbers. And I think what you'll see is they'll start to go down consistently because of this intensive effort. Yes?
Mayor, later today, you're going to be meeting with Andy Byford.
Yes.
Do you agree with his assessment that it was, quote, a bit weird that you hadn't called him in 6 months?
Not at all.
Second of all, even though, why don't you think that's weird? Why
Look, I want to emphasize, just as this previous discourse indicates, and I've really tried to make this clear to the people of the city, and I think certainly based on 54 or 55 town hall meetings, the people of the city really get it. I have the honor of being in charge of a whole host of areas of concern as mayor of the city. Policing, education, sanitation, parks, fire, going down a whole list for you. People of the city expect me to make sure that we're making progress in all those areas. It's abundantly clear that the City of New York does not control the MTA. If we controlled the MTA, I would be talking to Mr. Byford as often as I talk to these guys and to Richard Carranza and a whole lot of other people who I talk to all the time. I have said I think his vision that he's put forward is on the right track, but we need an answer to the financing issue once and for all. He's been right to say, let me finish, he's been right to say that the MTA has a huge need for sustainable resources. That can only be done in Albany, and I believe the millionaire's tax is the best way to do it. But I'm also going to press him on the fact that as those resources come in, we'd like to see them used a lot more effectively than they have been in the past. But look, when it's an agency I don't control, I'm going to put my focus on the things I can control. I think that's a smart use of time. Yes? Yeah.
Would it not make sense to have a more robust presence for you, even as a cheerleader for 8.6?
No, I've got a lot of other things. People need me to make sure the things that I control are working. There's endless focus on that. We just did a budget. We just did a major labor deal. There's a lot that has been focused on. That's where the focus needed to be. Now, that being said, on those issues where we do work closely with the MTA in a collaborative fashion, L train shutdown is a good example. Select bus service is a good example. I'm actually very pleased with the relationship. Our teams talk all the time. There's been a very cooperative dynamic. I don't have any doubt about the ability of my team and Mr. Byford's team to do good work every single day. On the bigger things that I care about on a substantive or policy level, again, I know where the power resides at the MTA. I'm not going to kid myself or my fellow New Yorkers on that. The ultimate decisions are being made in Albany. And so long as I'm convinced that our teams are working well together and we're getting the things done that we can get done, we'll keep doing what we're doing. Yes?
Today was the reunification deadline for kids, migrant children under the age of 5. What are your thoughts on only half of them being reunited with their parents?
Yeah, it's absolutely unacceptable. And, you know, when you look at the human reality here, and again, I got to see some of these kids at the center in East Harlem. You know, any parent, anybody who has children in their life, you can't see these kids and not feel a deep pain that they're being kept from their parents. And now we're learning that some, it may be a long, long time before they ever see their parents again, because some of these parents have been sent back to their home countries, and it's not like ICE is trying to keep track of them to make sure that unification occurs. It's becoming worse, not better. There's no plan. There's no information being given to us. And I think it's very clear people in this country are disgusted by this and expect the federal government to reunify these families quickly.
Are any of those 102 children under the age of 5 here in New York, at Cayuga, for example?
I would love, we know from the folks at Cayuga at various points they've had kids as young as 9 months. But again, we don't have the most up-to-date figures because the federal government still refuses to give us any accounting. And this is true for the whole country. They're not giving anyone accounting of where these kids are.
Switching gears here, just 2 quick questions. From 2 articles recently in the New York Post about the private school, Little Red Schoolhouse, segregating students in their school building, and now plans to segregate minority students from the 6th grade too. This has been ongoing. Parents have recently discovered this. They have a camp program there right now, summer camp program. Many parents have pulled their kids from the camp program after hearing about this. Other parents who were thinking about sending their kids there in the fall have decided they're...
Yeah, I'm just going to cut in and say I have not seen that coverage, so I just can't comment. I don't know enough to be able to speak to it.
The question is, what do you think about Trump's appointment?
About?
Trump's appointment.
Kavanaugh? I think it's a dangerous situation because it's clear that Mr. Kavanaugh has been part of the ongoing Republican effort to fundamentally change how this country is governed and to favor corporate interests, to reduce government regulation, to reduce the rights of working people, to undermine the rights of women. There's a lot in what he has said and what he has written that's very troubling. And to say the least, that I think there needs to be a very careful examination of whether there was any quid pro quo with the president on avoiding any kind of prosecution of the president. Look, my bottom line here is, and I think all Democrats should rally around this concept, what was done to his colleague, Merrick Garland, same exact court, also someone who in theory was a respected jurist. He wasn't even given the time of day on the theory there was an election coming up. This should be held until after the election. And let's see what that Senate looks like and let that Senate make the decision. I think it's the only fair way to go forward. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, 2 questions on NYCHA. The first is, one of the issues over the last couple of years has kind of been with criticism of the level of transparency about what had gone on in the past and what steps the administration is taking. In January, the administration lowered the threshold at which you would go into apartments and examine them from 10 micrograms to 5 micrograms. Why wasn't that announced until 6 months later?
Again, look, we're trying to once and for all create a common set of information for everyone. This, as I was just saying to David, this is an issue that has come out in sort of waves of information. We need once and for all to establish baseline information for the people of this city, for the people of NYCHA. Over-communicate, not under-communicate. Publish data on a regular basis. That will be quarterly starting next month. And I want to emphasize the health department has been working with any family whose child was identified by a doctor to have exposure at that 5 milligram or above level. So that's been going on for years and years. Outreach to the family, outreach to the doctor to make sure there was proper follow-up. But we're going to intensify all those efforts. As we've learned more and more, our decision has been, again, I'm using the Vision Zero analogy, we're going to eradicate this problem. That is the position we're now taking. That the more we've learned, the more we believe this is a problem that can be ended once and for all. And it's taken a while to understand all of the facets of it, all of the things that we could do. But that's how we're going to approach it.
I want to focus specifically on the fact it was a conscious decision not to publicize that. You were taking an action.
I don't agree with that statement. I think the bottom, again, I just don't agree with that statement. We have been, no, I'm saying we have been constantly communicating as we learn things, as we refine strategies, and we're going to keep doing it. Marcia.
Mr. Mayor, getting back to your meeting with Andy Byford, while I recognize that you don't this is an opportunity for you to use your bully pulpit on behalf of your constituents who are clearly frustrated with the quality of service that they have. And I wonder if you will use your bully pulpit to express their frustration and maybe make some suggestions to him about how we can improve service.
So, Marcia, first of all, yes, of course, I will take the occasion to speak on behalf of millions of New Yorkers who are deeply frustrated with the subways, who don't care about nice, pretty lights on bridges or amenities in stations. They just want the train to show up. That's the bottom line. So I'll vehemently make that point to them. But that's not where the action is, meaning Mr. Byford is not the person who can solve the problem. Only in Albany can the problem be solved. Mr. Byford, I have a lot of respect for, I think is someone who's going to help, but until he has a regular revenue stream, this is all a charade. We've got to fix the underlying problem. He doesn't make that decision. The governor and the legislature make that decision. So I have been advocating rather vehemently, as you know, for a millionaire's tax, which I believe would provide the MTA with the resources once and for all to fix the subways. The advocacy, the bully pulpit needs to be directed at Albany. That's the bottom line.
The governor has been pushing it, as you know. If that seems to be the only way to get funding, will you support it?
It's the same answer I've given before. I believe the millionaire's tax is a better solution. I believe it's a more popular solution. I believe it's a more politically saleable solution in Albany. You know, there was a poll a few months ago that showed it with over 70% support. Now, I'll look at other options too, and for example, the surcharges that were put on the for-hire vehicles, I thought that was a very good step. The governor's commission that said, let's not look at the bridges, let's look at a zone in Manhattan, I thought that was a very good step. So I remain open-minded that there may be ways to come up with other good ideas, but they have to be fair. They have to take into account the particular impact on Brooklyn and Queens, for example. So I'm listening, but I'll tell you, I still believe in my heart that the millionaire's tax is the fairer and better approach.
Time is running out, something has to be done.
Something had to be done a long time ago. The bottom line now is the window of opportunity to me is spring of 2019. My hope is we're going to have a new state senate that's going to be ready to act, and that the fact that we now know how bad the problem is and that we need a big solution, not a small little Band-Aid, a big solution, that there's going to be real energy directed on Albany and forcing their hand in 2019 to act. Let me do couple more. Go ahead.
For the commissioner, during the news conference, there was a car that crashed into a building on Staten Island.
You're saying right now? Okay.
At some point during the news conference. I didn't know if and there were reportedly one person dead and reports of shots that were fired.
Yeah, as I was sitting here looking at my phone talking about this press conference, yeah, it looks like there was someone chasing someone, fired some shots at him, and the car ended up crashing into someone. There was one person that was dead on arrival over there, and from what I believe off the phone was we made 4 arrests and recovered a gun.
Gloria, last call.
You're familiar with the community preference lawsuit that's going on. The plaintiffs in that suit have said that they want to depose you. They've deposed several of your deputy mayors. Would you be willing to sit down with them?
That's a question for the law department, and I let them figure out what makes sense in all those situations. I'm obviously not going to comment on a pending lawsuit, but please ask that of the law department. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.